Hi,
We
Dharmendra.
are
How are
here
you?
today. Hi, Raghav, and very good to see you. I think we have been waiting for, and our audience have been waiting for you to hear because you have been in the sector where most of the focus are in this year. So what I will give to my audience is today we are going to have a very specific topic on industrial sector, and could not be get better than Raghav to have this session answer some of the critical questions and I think I leave to Raghav to just give a short introduction because that way he can give more about his profile and what he have been doing in this sector. Over to you,
Well,
Raghav.
thank you, Dharmendra, for having me here today and getting to speak to your audience. So just as a background, I'm a partner at Deloitte. I specifically lead the mergers and acquisition and restructuring practice in strategy and commercial. So think about it in the front end and growth-oriented part of deal making. And my intersection of focus is industrial products and heavy manufacturing. So the very exciting world around energy transitions, electric vehicles, the whole mobility ecosystem, and all those many things, how industrial clients are adopting technology and innovation. That is the world that I breathe in and out every day. Been a part of Deloitte for about 14 years and had a tremendous journey going from analyst to partner and now getting to lead the very practice that I joined and where my passion lies in the front end of deal making.
Hi. So I know that when you spoke about 14 years journey from analyst to partner, I think it is great journey, Raghav. And I'm sure that your learning by working with private equity and the industrial sector will be very unique, unique input for all of us. And surely we'll just continue this discussion. And I would like to have certain questions we had, which I
Sure.
found that would be very good for the audience. So my first question is from my list is, can you list out the global trend the industrial sector may witness in 2022?
Wow. We can actually spend a whole evening on that and maybe some part of the morning.
I know, that's why I have.
But maybe I'll enumerate a few of the most significant trends in a summary. This is actually a very exciting time to be in the industrial sector. There are some major signature issues that are emerging and which are being embraced by the very industrial conglomerates. Some of them may be around global mobility, just as the advent of electric vehicles, autonomous vehicles, and smarter mobility takes form. It's really impacting as an area of opportunity for industrial suppliers. So there's a huge rush that's going on right now as different industrial conglomerates, automotive, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, they're all taking positions to get into the advanced mobility ecosystem. Another one is around energy transitions. I think it's nobody's guess anymore that there is a very concerted shift that is underway from conventional fuels to hydrogen and electric or solar, so some of the more alternative forms of energy. And even the most old school and conventional of companies are now expanding their exposure and their portfolio in some of these futuristic technologies around hydrogen and especially around EV. And then besides for that, there's also this convergence that's really impacting industrial clients. And think about the future of healthcare. So not only are, say, specialty chemicals doing what they have been for the last 150 years in terms of polymers and hydrocarbons, they're all trying to come further ahead in the value chain to be more meaningful in the medical devices and life sciences applications. So all these three signature issues at least keep me busy with a lot of the industrial clients, and I think these set of signature issues are going to create a lot of progress, a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and just a lot of organic growth in the industrial sector. So that was the first. The second, I'm also seeing a lot of adoption of smart factories or Industry 4.0, if you want to call that as a general theme. But a lot of these industrial conglomerates are making investments, greenfield and brownfield, into smart factories as one of the key ways of driving competitiveness. What that really means is making investments in connected, reliable, and predictive processes at the manufacturing plant level. And there are a number of use cases that are evolving, which are scaling up the previously isolated in-house technology type of projects to full production lines, or giving the right mix of vision and execution with efficiency. In fact, some of you may be aware that Deloitte has a smart factory program based out of Wichita, Kansas, where we take our clients and showcase all the advent of robotics and technology and automation that can be instilled into an assembly plant. In fact, just to share a statistic, there's about 83% of manufacturers that feel that the pandemic has really created this perfect storm for them to adopt smarter manufacturing technologies, and really made smart factory and Industry 4.0 a priority. The third trend that I'm seeing is really around a need for conscientious change. And what I include in that is, firstly, the importance of environmental, social, and governance, so ESG factors, which are really redefining how manufacturers are pursuing growth. In fact, the cost of capital is now being linked to ESG, and it's really becoming a priority for determining the financial health or the competitiveness of a company. In fact, about 80% of some of the largest companies are now reporting directly their exposure to physical or market transition risk associated with climate change. And if you look at, just how green debt issuance, think of all the green loans and sustainability bonds, they have really doubled from 2020 to now exceed over about $1.5 trillion in just this last year, which is really showing the importance that ESG drives today. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think a couple of weeks ago, there was a news out there where some of the EU securities watchdogs have asked credit rating agencies to improve how they are referring to ESG factors in their ratings, which are being used by investors to really make sizable donations to their sustainable funds. So ESG is definitely a very key factor. And just the corollary of it is really around diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's definitely more reporting around the board diversity, around leadership, which is also to appeal to workforce expectations and attract the best talent. And I feel that most manufacturers will be making efforts to make their DEI and their ESG efforts more visible. The third trend I could think of is more around just a simplification of the supply chain. I think as we get out of the pandemic, the supply chains have become significantly complex and been disruptive. And I think the recent semiconductor crisis or shortage of microprocessor chips is just the tip of the iceberg. So as these manufacturing companies struggle with backlogs of the past year, they're also going to start making efforts to shorten their supply chain to avoid higher shipping costs, which again becomes more pertinent with the price of gas recently, and also to protect themselves from future disruptions. The latter is particularly important with some of the more conventional heavy manufacturing industries, where because of the disruption caused by alternative energy, many of their suppliers could actually go out of business. So in order to protect their business, not only to simplify the supply chain, but just to, in a way, protect themselves from the supplier risk, a number of heavy manufacturing clients will also start acquiring some of their potential suppliers, besides for a more simplified supply chain. In fact, Deloitte had surveyed about 3,000 chief executives, and I would say a majority of them said that they were relying on short-term measures for their supply chain. And regardless of what approach they've been taking, 3/4 of them felt were very, very skeptical that their plans were being effective. So there's more to come in terms of just a simplification of supply chain. And then maybe finally, the last trend I'll share is around embracing technology. Technology to improve the future of work, technology to improve manufacturing efficiency and production. So if maybe talking about talent first, there is a very significant shortage that manufacturers are facing, especially in terms of filling middle skill jobs. And think of these jobs as, like machinists, welders, maintenance technicians. They're kind of at the higher end of experience, and they require some amount of specialized skills. And they can be, provided through applied training programs that could be under a year, but there's a significant amount of licensing and certification. Now, according to one of our Deloitte studies in 2021, the US manufacturing sector is expected to have about 2.5 million unfilled jobs by 2030. That's an appalling gap. So there's definitely a great impetus towards embracing technology to address this shortage. In fact, I think a similar resilience study that Deloitte had done last year, almost 60% of the respondents said that they are already using advanced technologies to redesign their job tasks. So think of greater automation of those previously manual tasks to using robots and K-bots and driving automation and AI into their manufacturing processes. So this is a significant change as manufacturing embraces digital, embraces technology and AI and some of these advanced technologies. So that's my long blur to answer that first question. This is again a very exciting time for the industrial and manufacturing sector, and these are just some of the most obvious probably trends that we are seeing on the horizon.
Right. So I think, if I see, in global trend, you focus important point of industry 4.0. Then you spoke about ESG, which are more critical and more organized. It's critical not only to say, but make sure that company are implementing and it is being measured. Then, supply chain simplification, you can say. That is one. And then you said about how to embrace new technology to address the talent shortage. So these are the key trends you think that, and this is very important. And we see this transition and news every time we go and read what is happening in M&A space, and especially in industrial sector. So thanks for giving all this input. Now we have additional questions, just if you move forward, I would like to know how, do government policy affect M&A strategies?
Oh, it absolutely does. I mean, that's a short question, but I'm sorry, the short answer, but there's a lot that's happening around the world, which is going to, at least in my personal opinion, increase the role that government agencies, regulators, or policy making in terms of how they influence deal making for corporations. I think the premise of this might be that the years of the pandemic recently, they have really created some major concerns around national self-reliance, national security, and supply chain dependencies. And there is also this significant shift of attitude towards how governments address climate change or sustainability related concerns. And I think those two themes or two broader themes are going to manifest themselves in the regulations that are going to govern M&A activity and also create challenges sometimes for deal making. Just to kind of share a few examples, I think it was maybe in the last year that in the United States, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the US, better known as CFIUS, and this is really a committee which evaluates national security implications of any foreign-bound M&A activity involving US companies. And it has been empowered significantly in the last year, and its authority has been expanded to include a broader range of activities, particularly around joint ventures. What that means is foreign investors can now expect greater scrutiny for any kind of investments they want to make in the US. In fact, just last July, the Biden administration issued an executive order to promote competition in the American American economy. And that executive order covers about 72 initiatives across a whole lot of federal agencies and a number of end markets, whether it's agriculture or banking and even the tech sector besides for manufacturing. And as a part of it, there's a White House Competition Council that has been formed to coordinate the federal government's response to the rising power of large corporations. So there's definitely significant impetus to safeguarding national interests from any kind of foreign-bound investment. And it's not just in the US, by the way. Just about in April last year, the UK government enacted a law, which frankly I consider as groundbreaking because it's the first of its kind in 2 decades, that creates a new agency to implement a regulation that will monitor and evaluate any foreign investment. So any prospective foreign acquirers will have to notify UK regulators for any proposed transaction in like 17, 18 sensitive industries. If you look around in Europe, the French government recently rejected the takeover of Carrefour by Canada's Couche-Tard grocery chain, and the reason being around food security. Just about in December of 2020, Germany blocked on national security grounds again, potential acquisition of IMST, which is a small satellite and communications technology company, by a venture of the state-controlled China Aerospace Industry Group, one of their subsidiaries. And it's not, even though China, France, UK, US, these are some of the larger markets driving M&A activity. It's going across and percolating to even smaller markets. As an example, Indonesia is also showing sense of protectionism in its policy making, and has announced moving away from exporting raw materials so that they can focus on developing their own downstream industries. So the world, as the world, I'm not to say that globalization will go away entirely, but regulation is going to create some level of challenge, and national security and national interest first is somewhat of a trend that we are seeing across all the various the markets. And I think it's, besides for this, this protectionism sort of regulation, the larger theme remains around ESG. So whether it's the European regulators, and I think the US governmental registrations are probably a year or two behind Europe in terms of how stringent their ESG regulations are. But ESG, again, is a very broad theme where government control and regulations are only getting stricter, and therefore will be a challenge in deal making.
Yeah, so I think more or less most of the country have this regulation. I think how effective they are implementing it, monitoring it, controlling, that might differ. And I think, as you said, most of this like European market have very strict regulation, and they are enforcing on ESG. Similarly, US and other country will follow the same, right?
Exactly right.
So good, it's very good input, Raghav. So I have similar questions, but it's a little different. So what are the key drivers leading to M&A?
Well, specific to maybe I'll use a frame called charting new horizons, which is this concept that has been recently launched by under the Deloitte M&A banner. Think of it as a set of defensive and offensive moves that companies make, as with M&A as an enabler. So maybe if I focus on some of the offensive moves first, there are some major opportunities that M&A can help industrial or broader set of companies to take position. Think of the signature issues again. There's tremendous opportunity in future mobility, around energy transitions, around just the broader modern healthcare and life sciences ecosystem. So there are some aggressive offensive moves that a number of industrial companies are going to make, and that is really going to drive M&A. There is a significant focus on shareholder value creation, on synergy realization, which again is a significant driver of M&A. In fact, maybe I can take that opportunity to also talk about a recent publication of a book by Deloitte partners Mark Sirover and Jeff Firens called The Synergy Solution. And they've studied about 1,200 deals over a 24-year period, collectively over $5 trillion of equity value. And one of their hypotheses that really stuck with me was how there is clear evidence that acquirers who begin with a positive market reaction and deliver on their synergy promise, they eventually enjoy returns of probably 60 percentage points higher than acquirers who start by facing a negative reaction and go on to realize some of those negative forecasts. So focus on synergy, focus on value creation is again a significant offensive move that companies are trying to make. There's also, let me take some examples of defensive moves now. And the obvious one is around portfolio optimization. And at least in the recent years, we've been seeing a lot of activist hedge funds that are pushing corporates and executives towards portfolio restructuring. And they're pressing for more asset carve-outs as almost like a precursor for approving any future growth ambitions or mergers. Right? And in a way, they're also ensuring companies remain on track with their sustainability and net zero commitments. So there's a lot of dynamic that's playing in around how portfolios of companies are being shaped. We had at Deloitte, we did a 2022 global divestiture survey, which identified that almost 7 in 10 companies today are making or considering to make 2 or 3 divestments in the next 2 years, essentially focusing on building resilience in their portfolio, focusing on their core assets, their core strengths, and divesting some of their non-core assets so that they can free up capital, unlock it, and then reinvest it into some of these growth areas. So defense and offensive moves almost together in the theme of portfolio optimization. And besides, just given the valuation prices these days, or at least in this last 1 year, that's also been providing an impetus to companies to sell their cargo assets at higher valuation and premiums. Another theme I would share is around which is driving M&A activity, and that's also a defensive move, is around safeguarding their supply chains. I mentioned a few examples around how heavy manufacturing is probably highly concerned about some of their suppliers going out of business, and therefore might bring some of these suppliers in-house or develop it in-house. In fact, some major retailers, some major off-highway manufacturing companies are, as we speak, considering bringing some of logistics and other supply chain capabilities in-house as their captive solutions. And they're also considering acquisition of various suppliers to maintain that competitive positioning in the market. So that supply chain risk will also drive M&A activity as a defensive move. If I think about just around value chain expansion, how are companies reevaluating their source of competitive advantage? We are fortunately or unfortunately living in a world where disruption is at a pace that's never been seen before. So a constant evaluation of their portfolio, identifying gaps, both for a defensive move, but also considering opportunities for expansion. That's a priority for executives as well. And really being prepared for convergence as it's taking place. Since we're talking about industrials and manufacturing, digitization of business, shifting in that consumer attitudes, going across those traditional boundaries between sectors, these are all themes that are leading to evolution of new ecosystems and creating opportunities for innovative players to come in and disrupt established companies. So that again is really it's a more of an offensive move on how M&A is being driven. And for some of our audience who want to learn more about these offensive moves in M&A, charting new horizons or the future of M&A, as we passionately call it within Deloitte M&A, that's something to learn more about.
Sure, we'll figure out more information from this topic. Okay,
sure.
So I think I have my next question, but I know part of that you have already answered. Within the industrial sector, I wanted to ask you that, can you identify the subsectors within industry, within industrial with high M&A activity, which you think that is going to be in 2022?
Yeah, I think in general, any of the mobility, energy transition, or life science ecosystem, any of the industrial players who are in that ecosystem or trying to get in the ecosystem, there will be a significant heightened M&A activity that can be expected. If you just take the example of automotive, it's no one's guess anymore. There's a huge demand for electric vehicles,
huge demand.
And frankly, the surge is only being deterred not by demand but by supply constraints. So there's a massive shortage, say, of PVDFs, which is basically the connection between the electrodes and in the EV battery, and it's going to be insufficient to meet demand until 2025. The prices of lithium carbonate, that's almost quintupled in China compared to just a year before. So there is these shortages in supply that are actually slowing down the the adoption of EV is not really the demand. So that is that automotive or the broader mobility ecosystem, that is definitely going to see some amount of M&A activity. There's also more environmental concerns or agencies that are enacting some stringent emission norms, and this will only further drive M&A activity towards in the EV or mobility ecosystem, and also will increase some of the manufacturing costs of electric drivetrains and also fuel efficient diesel engines. So that's just a corollary to the M&A topic that you were talking about. The second subsector is around engineering and construction, which traditionally has lagged behind other subsectors if we think about digital strategy or maturity of adoption of digital investments. But that's really picked up, and I think the focus of engineering construction companies in the near term will be around expanding their digital footprint, and how they really show a strong return on investment in the digital space. And as the decarbonization initiatives gain momentum, there's also going to be a pretty consistent rise in demand for ESG friendly buildings, which again is going to push for engineering construction companies. The third could be around specialty chemicals. I'm seeing chemical consumers or customers increasingly value sustainability and prioritizing the products based on circularity and carbon footprint, and that is driving chemical companies to accelerate their decarbonization technologies, to re-examine their existing assets, and also to diversify away from hydrocarbons where possible. So I'm definitely going to see a lot of demand from specialty chemicals that are trying to expand in some of those alternative products and more sustainability focused type of products. So those are some of the key spaces within industrials where we can expect some pretty heightened M&A activity.
Right. So I think you highlighted three subsectors, primarily, focus on automotive, focus on engineering and construction, and specialty chemicals. So these are the three key areas where you see there are more M&A deals going to happen in this coming year. Okay. So now I have my last question to you, because I know this is you have given a good summary and most of things are linked. And now we know exactly where industrial sector is heading towards. So my last question to you is more on what are some of the key challenges in the industrial space that affect M&A deal?
I think the regulatory scrutiny could be the first, and I think it has significantly intensified over the last couple of years. Just a whole number of agencies in the U.S. that now control deal making. There's the U.S. Department of Justice, the Federal Trade Commission, which has a purview of antitrust laws. The U.S. SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, which frankly has caused a significant fall in SPACs or special purpose acquisition companies. And of course, CFIUS that we talked about earlier, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., which is slowing down investments of Chinese companies in the U.S. So there's definitely more and more of regulatory scrutiny, not just in the US, but also in Europe and across the world, which will have more of a role to play in M&A. China, of course, has had that for a long time, just because of the nature of their government. But the Ministry of Commerce, MOFCOM, as known better, would have a significant say in giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down to any deal, and also determining the extent of investment of any foreign entity in China, and around how labor laws and their portfolio really of any foreign company is set up in their country. If you look at the European countries, the workers' councils, especially in countries like France, in Germany and Spain, they're known for creating a certain amount of deterrent for the right reasons, for making sure that labor laws are respected and there are certain safeguards that labor have and are not in any way compromised because of cross-border M&A. So those agencies I see are only playing a stronger role by the day which is going to impact M&A deal making also. So that is the angle around government and regulatory bodies. The second is around, I would call it auction jumping, where I'm seeing these days where there's such heightened demand for M&A and M&A activity like never seen before. There are multiple bidders and all with heightened valuations. So a lot of aggressive acquirers are actually going for a relatively short confirmatory due diligence and then submitting bids prior to the auction deadline to get ahead of other bidders. So this trend is expected to continue in the deal market as long as it stays hot, and are ways for buyers to distinguish themselves in a competitive market, which could also be a challenge for M&A. I think in terms of integration, there's a lot of industrial conglomerates today are not buying their competitors of a similar size, but they're actually going after some focused technologies. They're going after some smaller and agile companies, which are really providing or filling in a gap in their portfolio. And while it is a strategic acquisition, it also creates a set of challenges in integrating the tech infrastructure or just bringing these processes and capabilities together between the bigger conglomerate and the smaller target company. And then lastly, around synergy realization, I think being over optimistic in terms of announced synergies really hurts values in the post-merger integration. And many companies are actually using M&A as a must-do objective, as opposed to thinking about how it really enables their corporate ambitions and their broader portfolio. Avoiding that synergy trap of announcing synergies and being over optimistic and pursuing a deal because almost forcing yourself to pursue a deal. I think that's a tendency to be avoided, and those tendencies also create a challenge in realizing value from M&A, and can in fact destroy shareholder value if the right M&A strategy is not pursued and a robust synergy capture or integration program is not put in place.
Right.
Yeah, so those are some of the challenges that I foresee in deal making.
Yeah, so they were very helpful, and thanks for your time, Raghav. And we'll be able to refer some of the Deloitte framework we spoke about. And if somebody wanted to get more information, they can connect you directly and get some information about this framework. So thanks for your time, and I look forward for another similar kind of discussion where we go and talk about another topic which will be related to industrial sector, how they are coming to the next level. Okay, so thanks for your time. Thanks for your time, and look forward for another discussion soon. So we'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Dharmendra.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.